My name is Guillaume, and I'm working with a small team of indie devs on an ambitious AA game planned to release on PC and possibly PS4 and Xbox One. We are seasoned game developers who have already worked on AAA titles, who started a passion project 1 year ago that is turning into a serious title that we want to release. And that's where we need you. On April 21st, 2020, this Reddit post by user Don Poco quietly went up, one of the first public signs of Guillaume Broche and the team that would become Sandfall Interactive. Just a simple call for a couple of voice actors. But that post became the spark for something far larger. What followed was a slow, steady gathering of unlikely developers. People drifting in from Reddit, ArtStation, obscure indie forums, and even Korean animators off YouTube, all orbiting around a single grassroots passion project. A project that would grow into one of the most impactful JRPGs the industry has seen in years, built not on the hundreds of millions of dollars poured into modern soulless AAA development, but on love, care, passion, and a budget of under $10 million. Clair Obscur, Expedition 33.
Like 6 years is a very, very long time to work on something, and it's basically been my life for the last 6 years. I've been doing pretty much only this, living for this, dreaming about this, waking up every morning, working on this, like every weekend, every day, and I'm very fortunate to be able to achieve what is basically my dream and put it out in the world. The biggest ride of my life, yeah.
But the story of defeating a 33-year-old Guillaume Broche and the studio he would build doesn't really begin here.
Hi everyone, my name is Guillaume and I am CEO and Creative Director of Sandfall Interactive. We are a new studio based in France, as you might have guessed from the accent.
Actually, not even here. To understand why this game happened, we need to go much further back. In the 1980s, Japanese developers were stepping into a rapidly expanding world of computer RPGs. In the West, titles like Ultima, Wizardry, and Might and Magic defined the genre on PC, all drawing heavily from the widely popular tabletop game, Dungeons & Dragons. Yoji Horii looked at the templates and saw a chance to reshape it for their demographic. In 1986, he stripped away the complexity and reframed the genre around a few core ideas: clear character-driven storytelling, emotional and often melodramatic tone, and simple party-based, turn-based combat, all presented through a distinctly anime-inspired aesthetic. Crucially, it was designed for consoles in mind, not PCs. Anyone with a Famicom or NES could understand it and play it, even if they never touched a tabletop RPG rulebook. The result? One of the first true JRPGs, a game that ignited a movement in the Japanese industry throughout the late 80s and 90s.
I don't know what's going on. What are they giving away?
At Squaresoft, Hironobu Sakaguchi took on those ideas to shape a series that would go on to define the genre for an entire generation, and unknowingly inspire a young Guillaume growing up in France: Final Fantasy. More than just a franchise, it was a series that pushed cinematic storytelling, music, and spectacle forward, leaving a lasting mark on countless gamers and future developers around the world. Guillaume was just another kid sitting in front of a CRT and a PlayStation 1, trying to make sense of Final Fantasy VIII, a game he loved, even if he couldn't understand the text or defeat the very first boss, relying solely on the attack button over and over again. As the years passed, his love for JRPGs grew beyond Final Fantasy into the stylish worlds of Persona, to the Xbox era of JRPGs like Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey, and later to games that would shape his creative instincts even further: Demon's Souls, Sekiro, Journey, Devil May Cry, games that left a mark deep enough that Don Poco 1997, Guillaume, would eventually upload his first YouTube video, a no-hit Devil May Cry 5 gameplay that he shared as, "I love this game so much, I had to make my first ever YouTube video." He would even speedrun Sekiro for fun.
Bad speedrunner, absolutely not among the best, but like I wasn't professional or anything, it was just like for fun.
That's still
I had
crazy.
nothing to do. I had a very deep relationship with Sekiro, like I was just absolutely addicted for at least 6 months. Parrying is life in games.
Across all these games, and clearly his favorite hobby, you can see the same principles he would one day build his own art around. Emotional storytelling, cinematic turn-based combat, expressive visuals and cutscenes, powerful soundtracks, and mechanics that reward skill, perfectly timed attacks, and perfectly timed parries. Ideas that would stay with him. By 2014, fresh out of business school, Guillaume stepped into the corporate side of game development, joining the French giant Ubisoft as an assistant creative director for the Might and Magic brand. A year later, he moved to Microsoft. These early roles gave him a glimpse of the AAA world, but they also planted something else, a growing urge to make games of his own. By 2016, Don Poco surfaced on Reddit asking for advice on which engine he should use for a narrative 2D platformer, a personal project he wanted to build alone from A to Z. Commercially, it never saw the light of day, but the seed was planted. His own expedition had quietly begun. Still, Guillaume stayed with Ubisoft and by 2019 was credited as the associate producer on Ghost Recon Breakpoint and The Division 2, games buried under predatory monetization, rushed development, and technical issues. Productions built on budgets that routinely climbed into the tens of millions, sometimes well over 100, all for products that were at best mediocre. And for Guillaume, the work kept pulling him away from what he cared about most: productions, planning, meetings, everything except the creative spark that had brought him into game development in the first place. JRPGs, Final Fantasy. His next role didn't help. Narrative lead for Might and Magic, a brand now reduced to a heavily monetized mobile game. He grew bored. And so, just like in 2016, new ideas began to form. What if he learned to build games himself, using Unreal Engine? What if this project could become more than a technical exercise? What if it could fill the space left behind by Final Fantasy's modern pivot?
But like this kind of like JRPG turn-based with this kind of graphics are not really done anymore since Lost Odyssey. And I think it's just that there is this big like empty space in the market, which is basically why I started this project. It's just I wanted to play a game like this.
He considered pitching this idea to Ubisoft, but he knew exactly how that would go. With the bureaucracy, the hierarchy, and his lack of seniority, it would take him, in his words, 25 years to get it approved. So he decided to take it into his own hands, the earliest spark of a game that would shake the entire industry. Project W.
How did it turn to this?
Did you kill them all?
To this question, I have no answer. As I clean my blade from the blood of the innocent, I wonder, is there no one left to save?
This trailer, almost unrecognizable today, first appeared online in 2020. It wasn't Clair Obscur, it was an Unreal Engine prototype called We Lost, but it was the foundation of everything that would follow. The idea started forming in late 2019 while Guillaume was still working at Ubisoft on The Division 2 in Malmö, Sweden. For 6 months, it was nothing more than a way to learn, to experiment, and to have fun.
One night I just started Unreal Engine just to learn and have fun with it, and I got completely addicted, like to a point that was very, very toxic for my health. I was basically working 8 hours per night, after my day job, just because I couldn't let go. It was like I can do everything. I'm a god in this world.
During coffee breaks at the office, Guillaume began talking through those ideas with a coworker, gameplay programmer Tom Guilma, not about budgets or scope, but about feel, what turn-based combat could be, how timing, rhythm, and player input could make it more engaging. Eventually, Guillaume sent Tom a file, Sandfall.u project.
Soon, I was creating the first prototypes of the reactive turn-based system, combining real-time offense and defense elements, and a cinematic battle camera system. Things really clicked when we tested the first version of those features. We felt we had something both challenging and fun.
For the next year and a half, the two quietly built the prototype together, iterating, breaking systems, rebuilding them again, slowly shaping mechanics that would later define Expedition 33. Timed inputs, reactive turns, ideas reminiscent of Lost Odyssey and Paper Mario. Then a third piece fell into place. Francois Maurice, an old friend of Guillaume's, joined the project, not from the games industry, but from tech, a product manager used to structure logistics and execution. And suddenly, the balance was there: creative vision, technical expertise, and someone who knew how to turn ideas into a plan. Project W, later known as We Lost, stopped being a side experiment. It became a real risk.
And when he described the project, I quit my job the following week and joined the team without hesitation. Because I believe that in video games, success always starts with a strong creative vision.
In 2020, the three made a decision that would define everything that came next. They formed Sandfall Interactive. But even then, the team was far from complete. To move forward, Sandfall needed resources, whether that came from investors, a publisher, or even a Kickstarter. And for that, Sandfall would need more than a prototype. They needed people, because like any RPG, you don't start with a finished party, you assemble it.
China has identified the cause of the mysterious new virus.
Coronavirus.
Coronavirus.
There are fears a rapidly spreading virus has reached Australia.
This is a rapidly emerging situation where there is not a cause for alarm.
During the COVID lockdowns, Guillaume did what many indie developers were doing at the time. He turned to the internet, and it started with a Reddit post. Looking for voice actors to produce a demo, Guillaume connected with Jennifer Yen. At the time, she too had no experience working in video games at all. Like Guillaume, was simply bored at her day job and partially retired as an equity investor, taking random jobs, even a stint as a flight crew for NASA.
Essentially on doing a mission simulation. So we simulated a mission to an asteroid. So I spent 2 months in a module with 3 other people, and we were cut off from the world, and we were just could only communicate through mission control. Yeah, I did a bunch of random things, and one of the random things I did was I saw a post on Reddit from Guillaume Broche, who is the creative director of Sandfall.
What she did have was a deep love for storytelling, often writing short stories for fun, stories that would influence the future of Expedition 33. As the two began talking, they quickly aligned on the tone and narrative direction, drawing inspiration from classic fantasy literature like The Wheel of Time and other character-driven epics. Before long, Jennifer wouldn't contribute her voice, but became a lead writer with no prior experience as one at all.
It was literally just a one-time like, oh, that could be fun, sure, why not? I use everything in the story, like all of my random hobbies are in the story somewhere. Her connection to the material was personal, and that intimacy would shape the emotional core of the story. At the same time, Guillaume began searching for artists. Scrolling through portfolios late at night, he eventually stumbled across the work of Nicolas Maxen Francombe on ArtStation. Guillaume was looking for something very specific: realistic visuals, filtered through influences like steampunk, the Victorian era, Final Fantasy, BioShock, and strangely enough, even SpongeBob, for the game's underwater environments. Nicolas, based in Belgium, had no prior experience on working on video games either, but his dark, industrial steampunk artwork stood out immediately. he was brought on as a lead artist. You can still see those early influences clearly in the We Lost trailer, a far cry from the painterly, surreal look the final game would eventually adopt. That left one major role and filled for Guillaume's Final Fantasy-like vision: music. And that gap wouldn't be filled until he stumbled across the work of Laurien Testard. At the time, Laurien was a freelance composer working on small indie projects and video content, passionate about games and music, and regularly posting his work on forums, itch.io, and SoundCloud throughout 2020. Guillaume discovered Laurien on an obscure French forum, something along the lines of 1D Gamer. He followed the trails to Laurien's SoundCloud, listened to his tracks. Laurien was then invited to compose for Project W. The core of Sandfall Interactive was in place, no industry veterans, but a small group of people pulled together by passion, coincidence, and shared taste. A tight-knit team, assembled piece by piece, ready to attempt something far bigger than any of them had planned. But Guillaume and the team still had a problem. None of them had shipped a game like this before. Guillaume had been tinkering with game development for years, but much of his knowledge came from the same place many aspiring developers start: YouTube tutorials. By 2021, Guillaume was confident enough to give something back, uploading his own Unreal Engine tutorial.
Hello everyone, it's Guillaume from Sandfall Interactive, and today I'm going to show you how to sculpt your metahuman in the brush without breaking the rig.
This was the reality behind Sandfall Interactive, a group of people learning, solving problems as they went. And it was in 2021 that Clair Obscur truly began to take shape. The team had grown to around 8 developers, many of them still junior or recent graduates, with plans to scale to roughly 15. Their goal was clear: build a 1-hour vertical slice strong enough to convince investors that this project was real. But getting there meant making hard decisions. Much of what defined We Lost, the heavy Victorian-era steampunk aesthetic, was stripped away. Only early versions of Mael and Lune survived the transition, and according to lead writer Jennifer Yen, that shift wasn't accidental.
Got some very encouraging advice from some advisors and investors who are saying, you know, you can think bigger. What would you want? Don't constrain yourself. If we didn't have to think about that, what would we want? And that's when we came up with Expedition, part of which came from one of the short stories I was working on, actually.
The team realized they weren't just constrained by budget, they were constrained by imagination. The Reborn project would now be set during the French Belle Epoque, blending historical elegance with fantasy and Art Deco influences.
So it was a mix of a paint vibe mixed with ceramics, and then kind of going with crazy colors all over the place. And then also, I mean, it does help that there's an amazing story behind it, so that definitely helped me create the world. Because originally I kind of was stuck in my, Victorian steampunk headspace for quite a while.
This new direction, led visually by Nicholas, aligned perfectly with the evolving narrative. Jennifer and Guillaume drew inspiration from The Horde of Counterwind, a story about the journey towards the source of all winds. Paired with Guillaume's own imagination, a living painting, a looming doomsday clock, and a theme of grief shaped by his mother's deepest fear, the loss of a child. Out of those ideas emerged the Paintress, and slowly, through iteration, constraint, and reinvention, the pieces finally locked together.
Our philosophy has never been to over-explain anything. We trust the player and their ability to put the pieces together. And we also know that that's part of the joy and the engagement that you get out of a game, the enjoyment you get from it is kind of seeing how all of these things piece together. So
what began as Project W, what survived as We Lost, had coalesced into something new: Clair Obscur, light and shadow, life and loss. And the timing was also perfect. By the early 2020s, Unreal Engine 5 had lowered technical barriers. Complex tools became more accessible, allowing small devs to punch above their weight. From the earliest stages of production, Sandfall leans heavily into Unreal's newer systems, features like Nanite and MetaHuman, allowing them to build highly detailed environments and realistic character models needed for their story without the traditional overhead of AAA pipelines.
Character creator is at the heart of a pipeline for all our character models. The game is very narrative-driven, so having high-quality characters is extremely important to us.
Even motion capture was rethought. Instead of expensive studio setups, simple smartphones were used to capture facial performances, dramatically cutting costs while still achieving impressive results. Combat animation specifically followed the same philosophy. Much like the original team assembly, Guillaume went searching online, this time on YouTube, looking for animators whose work stood out. After reaching out to dozens of creators, specifically to Korean animators, one name arose to the surface.
So I was just looking through YouTube, through animation reels of animators and stuff, and I just watched 25 reels in a row, and I said, okay, just Korean reels, and they just do exactly what I need. Basically, I took a list and I sent mails to 200 Korean animators or something like that, and one answered, Sung-Yoon, our first animator, and he's absolutely brilliant. So he started by himself, and then as we grew in production, he just invited his animator friends to join.
What would have been impossible or painfully janky 20 years earlier was now achievable.
We are very excited about the future of Project W as the team is growing and the game looks better than ever. Expect to hear more from us in the coming months.
But securing funding for an indie production or a AA production with no prior experience still wasn't easy. At the time, many investors were chasing trends: the metaverse, live services, fast-scaling platforms, not narrative-driven JRPGs built by small, unproven teams. So most were turning them down, except for one, Clair Interactive, a newly formed French publisher positioning itself as a developer-first collective, an initiative of 7 independent studios, such as A44 of Ashen and Slowcap for Saifu. Clair itself was partially funded by the Chinese giant NetEase, which had invested roughly $120 million into the group. While they were interested in the pitch, they passed it on. Initially,
it was in prototype form. It was an early version of the game. We knew it wasn't very far away. I know that my CEO, Alexi Garavarian, had the most contact with them at this time. He saw the potential in it, but thought there were still some parts of it that needed a little bit more work. So
it needed refinement. It was too early. So throughout 2021 and 2022, Sandfall pieced together funding wherever they could. A €50,000 grant from Epic's Mega Grants program and public tax aid, and at times, even friends and family. You see, Guillaume Broche wasn't entirely disconnected from the business world. His family was linked to several large companies, such as Myrta Invest. The exact role it played in Sandfall's funding remains unclear, if any. Articles refer only to business angels, but it's likely that this early support helped give the studio the initial momentum it needed. And just like that, they had a complete vertical slice at hand, shown at GDC in 2022, and Sandfall finally caught a break. The vertical slice was impressive enough that days before the GDC, the studio officially signed a publishing deal with Clair Interactive. For Sandfall, this meant stability and growth. Through 2023 and 2024, the team had grown to roughly 22 to 25 developers, soon hitting a peak of about 35 people and a dog manager. With outsourcing not only for combat animation but QA, localization and platform porting, they now operated across 2 offices, one being a manor far from the image of a modern game studio where composer Laurent Testard began shaping the soul of the game's music. And he wasn't alone. There, Laurent was joined by Elise Duport-Persien, a soprano singer discovered the same way so many others had been, through YouTube.
La voix d'Alice, c'était celle qui me touchait le plus de très très loin. Elle me créait vraiment des émotions très fortes. Je voulais que les joueurs puissent ressentir ça eux aussi Si cette émotion-là, elle m'atteignait, je pensais que ça allait pouvoir aussi atteindre les joueurs pour jouer au jeu.
Covers of Final Fantasy, Nier Automata, fragments of a voice that felt timeless. In that space, the score of Clair Obscur started to take form. And for the first time, they began teasing the world with glimpses of what their game was becoming. Because soon, the world was about to see Project W for the very first time.
Soon she'll wake and paint again. We'll break the cycle, so she can't steal anyone else's future.
In June 2024, after nearly 2 years of silence, the game re-emerged at the Xbox Showcase, revealed as a Game Pass title, bringing with it visibility, extra funding, and validation. What caught people off guard wasn't just the beauty of the trailer, it was the gameplay, stylish turn-based combat, yet with real-time parries, reminiscent of Sekiro. The reaction was immediate. The art style, the music direction, the colors, this trailer is truly beautiful. About time we get more high-budget, turn-based games. For years, fans had been waiting for a true return to cinematic, turn-based Final Fantasy-style JRPGs, and suddenly it was here from the most unlikely place, France. Ironically, the praise, high budget, couldn't have been more wrong. Clair Obscur presented a lavish motion capture and a cast of high-profile voice actors including Ben Starr from Final Fantasy XVI, Jennifer English from Baldur's Gate 3, Charlie Cox.
Knew nothing about it other than I went into a studio and I did 4 hours probably of voiceover for this character. I remember being in the studio and thinking, this is beautiful, like the visuals are extraordinary. They've come a long way since, Mario 64.
And Andy Serkis from the film world, all made possible with Kepler's backing. So on paper, this looked like a game with a budget comfortably in the tens of millions. But that wasn't the reality. As would later be confirmed, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 was built on a budget of under $10 million, at a time when the industry regularly pushed budgets into the hundreds of millions. The scale of what Sandfall achieved with those resources was staggering. Part of it came down to modern pipelines, part of it was outsourcing, but more than anything, everyone was rowing in the same direction. They loved their game, and they loved making it.
The creative direction has always been very, very clear. We knew what we wanted to make, and we knew that we are basically making the game that we want to play, and I think it's as simple as that. It's really like the key ingredient. It's like, even today, like in the team, we are still playing the game and discovering new builds and trying some speedruns, and like we are having so much fun with it.
Even their roles were flexible. Inside Sandfall, devs wore multiple hats. Jennifer Yen, for an example, wasn't just lead writer, she also was voice and localization producer. Guillaume was CEO, creative director, but also cinematic and actor director, even mocapping Monoko. This kind of flexibility would be nearly impossible inside a traditional AAA studio. The team also made deliberate production choices. Many environmental elements, rocks, background props, came from free Unreal Engine asset packs. Instead, time and effort were poured into what Sandfall called hero assets, the moments players actually remember. As one developer put it, it's about putting effort into the things that stand out, and spending less time on the things that no one's going to ever look at. They avoided massive open levels, they avoided content bloat, they avoided the clutter and excess that had come to define so many modern AAA releases, all the while honoring the roots of the JRPG genre. The result was a production that was focused, efficient, and well, at the same time, unmistakably French. By January 2025, Sandfall returned once more, this time at the Xbox Developer Direct.
We poured our hearts and souls into this game for the past 4 years. That's why we're delighted to announce that Expedition 33 launches on April 24th.
A release date was finally revealed.
After the hype, after the expectations placed on a studio no one had heard of just a few years earlier, the question was no longer where did this game came from, it was far simpler. Could it actually deliver?
Not many people are as lucky as I am to be able to work with such a talented team on what is basically a dream, and making this dream come true, it's unbelievable. I wish I had better words to share how it feels, but really it's overwhelming, it's too much.
Expedition 33 is breathtaking. It is a game that commands respect on every single level and deserves every bit of praise that it's got.
It was that feeling of being like washed up on a beach after a tidal wave of vision and originality and creativity had picked you up, carried you some distance, and then just totally dumped you out.
When Clair Obscur Expedition 33 launched on April 23, 2025, another wave hit the gaming world. Metacritic score above 90, a player rating hovering around 9.6, one of the highest rated releases of the year and of all time. Within 24 hours, the game sold over 500,000 copies, with more than 100,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. And it did this while launching on the exact same day as Oblivion Remastered, yet word of mouth carried it forward. Within 33 days, Expedition 33 passed 3.3 million copies sold. An extraordinary result for a first-time studio, built largely by developers without traditional resumes or decades of shipped titles. By October, sales had climbed past 5 million. But perhaps the most surprising part of its success was the price. At a time when much of the industry was quietly pushing games towards $80, Clair Obscur launched at $50, with free updates, no aggressive monetization, no live service hooks, just a complete game with 30 to 60 if not more hours of gameplay. The success rippled far beyond sales. The game was praised publicly by French President Emmanuel Macron. A film adaptation entered early development through Kepler's connections. The soundtrack topped Spotify's classical charts, with concert tickets selling out well into 2026. All of it unfolding as a shaken AAA industry looked on, watching a small French studio succeed with a fraction of their resources. Much like Baldur's Gate 3 with JRPGs, Expedition 33 proved something else, that high-production, turn-based JRPGs weren't dead, they had simply been ignored by an industry optimized for spreadsheets, not passion for the art.
And the game of the year is... mon ami Clair Obscur, Expedition 33!
The year culminated at the Game Awards, a record number of nominations, near clean sweep of wins.
The Game Award goes to Clair Obscur, Expedition 33!
Clair Obscur, Expedition 33.
Jennifer
English! Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. Clair Obscur, Expedition 33.
Laureat Testa.
Clair Obscur, Expedition 33.
Expedition 33.
What a weird timeline for us. This was supposed to be a joke, the Barbarian Narnia. I have no idea what's happening. Well, I want to thank first the incredible team at Sandfall Interactive. They are not watching from home as we brought literally everybody here to celebrate with us, so I love you guys. And also, I want to extend a thanks to the unsung heroes of this industry, the people who make tutorials on YouTube on how to make a game, because we had no idea how to make a game before, so thank you.
And in a moment that perfectly captures Sandfall's journey, Guillaume closed his speech by thanking and honoring the legacy of Hironobu Sakaguchi that inspired him all those decades ago.
Hironobu Sakaguchi, who made me fall in love with games and inspired me to become a game dev, so thank you, Mr. Sakaguchi-san.
While Laureat left us with a beautifully fitting thank you speech, an Easter egg mimicking Alicia's letter, a life to dream. Sandfall has already confirmed more Clair Obscur projects are on the way. They have built relationships with their inspirations at Square Enix, reopening conversations the industry had long closed, with Square likening the idea of the return of turn-based Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. This isn't a traditional rags to riches story, as it's sometimes portrayed, but it was a ragtag group of passionate, junior and unconventional developers, aided by time, luck, and modern tools, who proved that focus and care can still outperform excess. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 isn't quite a traditional indie, and it isn't AAA. It's something in between, a AA, exactly as Guillaume envisioned all those years ago, a kind of studio that sits in the middle, publisher-backed, decently funded yet creatively independent, not chasing mass audiences, but building something specific, intentional, and deeply personal. Studios and games that over the years were either absorbed or squeezed out entirely by a ballooning industry. Whether Sandfall grows into a new independent giant alongside studios like Larian or CD Projekt Red, or remains deliberately small, Clair Obscur stands as another proof that art can always be built through vision, focus, and passion, and that for those who come after, the path is no longer theoretical, it's already been walked.
Obscur dans les hauts peintures trouvera sans elle. Clair obscur troublera, dur courbera et fait. Clair obscur dans les hauts peintures trouvera sans elle.
C'est vraiment une expérience qui a été très importante pour moi. J'ai pleuré pendant 2 jours, j'ai rigolé, c'était formidable.